Hey everyone, it is Dylan and Charlie from the Black Forest Wood Company. This week we're going to show you guys how we actually managed to cast a piece of cake successfully in epoxy resin, our Black Forest deep resin specifically. You guys have seen the beer bottle castings, but this was a little bit trickier because we didn't want the cake to bleed out into the resin, and as you guys can see, it's nearly perfect. We had a few mistakes that we're going to go over. But this is kind of a fun new technique that we've learned how to do. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, please leave a like or even just a comment. It really helps out our engagement when you guys comment on our videos, and we do read every single comment. So leave one now, and well, I hope you guys enjoy. And I think Charlie's kind of annoyed at me because he can't eat this. Hey, you're getting tired, eh? We have got our cake here now. It's actually a couple days after Haley's birthday and the day before mine. And naturally, we had to get Black Forest cake. It just makes sense. We almost didn't. We actually were trying to think of what cake to use, and we didn't end up thinking of this until like today. Haley suggested it, so we're doing Black Forest cake. So let's get this open here. What my plan is, obviously we've never done something like this before. But what the plan is to try and coat this before we cast it to try and actually preserve the whole look of the cake. Because a long time ago, if you guys have been subscribed for a while, you may remember our video of where we cast a foam, we cast an apple, we did grass, a whole bunch of different stuff. And some of the more, I guess, organic materials that we didn't work so well. Like we did bacon, that didn't work. We did an apple. It kind of started to rot after a while. This smells really good now after I just opened it. So we're gonna cut a slice, we're gonna seal it in epoxy, and then we're gonna try casting it. So let's cut a slice out here. Jeez, this isn't it. Okay, so we've got our cake out here, as you guys can see. I've just got it on a sheet of acrylic right now, so I'm gonna coat it, and then if it sticks to this, it should just peel off the acrylic pretty easily. And the product we're gonna be using today is our coat resin. Different than our deep resin, this only takes 24 hours to cure. It has a lot lower viscosity than a lot of your traditional coating resins, which means that there's gonna be less bubbles, but also if you wanna use it for filling cracks, it's really effective for that. So not only do we use it for things like this, but we will fill all kinds of cracks. I don't have any in here, but on our bottle castings, when we pour that bottom layer, we use the coat. So that's what I'm gonna mix up today. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. I'm probably gonna do about 200 mils in total. 100 of each. So then another tip is fill up a second cup with some warm water and then mix your epoxy while your other cup's inside that warm water. What that's going to do is lower the viscosity of your epoxy and make it a lot easier to mix. One thing though that you do have to be careful of is you can kind of end up flash curing it because heat is a catalyst to the chemical reaction. If you just leave it in for a minute or two, you should be fine. So then we've just got some small micro bubbles in there. So just before I pour it over the cake, we'll set it in here to degas. Okay, so we've got our coat resin here, nice and clear. I've just placed this inside one of our reusable forms so it doesn't get all over this table, but let's see how this works. I never thought I'd be pouring epoxy on cake. I can get this off easily after. The acrylic should peel off. I'm just wondering how easy the cake's gonna come off. I'm hoping if I get like something under here, the whole thing should just peel. But we will have to wait and see until tomorrow, and we will see how this cake casting comes out. Okay, so it has been a day since our coating. Everything looks pretty good. It's hard-ish, but it's still got some give to it, like you can see on the sides, but it does seem to be sealed. So I'm gonna try and pop this thing out now, and then after we get it popped out, I'm gonna try and cut away this excess epoxy and flip it over and seal the bottom. This is so weird.
custom plate.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so that's what we now have to get sealed. Okay, so this part actually seems like it could be a little tricky because I don't want to damage the cake. One side cleaned off, kind of. Now we will do this side. Yeah, this is actually how they make processed food. Yeah. Okay. There is a slice of epoxied cake. That feels so weird. So now we will seal off all of this goodness. So this, what I'm doing now is basically the exact same process that I did yesterday. I'm using our coat resin, 1-to-1 ratio, using the water to warm it up, and then this time I'm just going to be sealing the bottom of that. I'm not only going to try and coat the bottom, but any other spots that didn't look like they quite got everything they needed, I'll just drizzle some in there. So like some of these holes here. All I'm trying to do is make sure that when we actually go do our casting pour, that there isn't little voids that the epoxy is going to start to react with the cake within. Okay, so we've now got our cake cured up on both sides. Unfortunately, since we did the bottom last, some of it kind of cured on the top, so I've trimmed away some excess. There was a lot more on here before, like came all the way out to here, but it should be okay. So we've got a little mold built right here. There's a few bubbles in the bottom, but it's okay since it's just kind of an experiment. So we're literally just gonna place the cake in there, somewhere in the center, and fill this up with resin. So our mold size is 6 inches by 6 inches, and we want to pour just a little bit above the cake. So then how you would calculate that, go 6 times 6 times 4.5. That's the number of cubic inches divided by 61. Almost 3 liters, minus the cake. We're probably still going to mix 3 liters just because it's easier to measure out that ratio since it's a 2-to-1, and then if we have any left over, we can just pour some coasters or something. All right, so we are just going to glue down our piece just so it doesn't float because the cake does feel pretty light. So I'm just using some of the Affix Universal Fast Adhesive, and that actually looks pretty centered. All right. Okay, so we're about 5 days since we did the pour on our cake here. Everything's looking okay. There's a few air bubbles. You can kind of see the plastic or the epoxy section from where we sealed it. But overall, not too bad considering I don't think you're supposed to cast cake. So it's still a bit soft, but it's hard enough to take out of the mold here. So we'll pop it out and we'll see what it looks like. Okay. So yeah, our bottom layer, like we said, had a few bubbles, and it was a little yellow, unfortunately. But the top layer is very, very clear. Almost looks like you can still eat it. Wouldn't recommend it. Okay, so our cake is basically hardened up, ready to machine now. What I'm gonna do is just clean up some of the faces here on the jointer, then we're probably gonna take it to the saw just to cut everything else. But really kind of interested to see how this thing looks when it's all polished up. It's kind of exciting. So now that we've got basically these 4 faces all jointed here, we're gonna use these as a reference and then cut these other 2 faces on the saw. Well, there is the cake after being all cleaned up. So we've got some sanding to do now. You can still kind of see the cake in there. But now we get to see what the clarity is going to look like on this thing once we get it polished up. All right, so I've got the cake now. It's sanded to 4,000 grit. You guys can see that it's actually still quite hazy. You can see the cake, but it's not like a clear block of glass yet. So what we're going to be using are Menzerna polishes. Now, we don't sell these, but we just like these the most. So we've got all the way from 300 up to 3,800. Obviously, this is the finest. This is the most coarse. And then we've got 2 different pads we're going to use today, a wool pad and a yellow foam pad. So what these are going to do is get rid of all of our sanding scratches, and essentially it's going to be what gives it that glass-like look. I'm just going to grab this. So I don't want to touch it too much, so I'm not going to take all the dust off because I'm afraid to scratch it. But this is one that has been polished. So a lot more clear. It's actually got a nice shine to it. The haziness is just from the dust, but that's what we're going to be doing with that piece there. Okay, so now I'm just spraying some alcohol on here. All this is going to do is just clean the surface nicely before we actually go to polish it. He's like, this isn't funny. This is not a funny joke, Dylan. All right, well, here is the finished product. We got it all polished up. We also got a coat of ceramic on here, which you guys didn't see, but we do that on all of our castings. Charlie. And I also want to give a shout out to the person who kind of inspired us to try this. His name is Jedrick. He also has a YouTube channel. He casts really, really neat things in resin, so he inspired us a little bit to do this. So Jedrick, if you're watching, let us know what you think. You're the master, so we hope to get as good as you. But if you guys haven't, go check his channel out. Another idea we actually kind of had about these is, Haley's idea she had was actually doing wedding cakes, because a lot of people end up saving their wedding cake anyway, so we could preserve your wedding cake for you very well. And then I kind of thought it'd be funny, like at restaurants sometimes they'll come around with samples of like the desserts or something like that. So instead of making them out of plastic, have the real dessert, but just have it casted in resin to show it off, and you never need to make a new one. So yeah, those are just some of the ideas we had with this. I'm sure there's all kinds of different things that could get cast and new ideas we're gonna have. But let us know what ideas you guys have in the comments below. And thank you for watching.